a proper process. Not a single name or a vote was cast in her name for the candidacy. I really love the way the left has handled a lot of things here recently, and I just want to get your.
All right, so let's bring in Lars. Let's see what Lars got to say. What's going on, Lars? What do you think? What's going on, Lars? What do you think about the FEMA situation that's going on the ground?
I mean, kind of like Connor said, I think they're doing everything they can there. I don't necessarily think that that's always something that's the easiest thing to navigate for either party. Sure. I guess I wanted to respond to, your title because.
Yeah, I got you.
I am not really. I do not like Trump, right?
Sure.
But I don't necessarily love the way the left has handled a lot of things here recently, and I just want to get your opinion on something here.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
With the the whole thing about Biden stepping down, right? And obviously, September 6th was an awful scar for democracy, but then for the left to essentially pick a candidate without any of the delegates or anyone being able to vote on the matter, just essentially, hey, this is who we're going to put in front of you, and not a single person had the ability to vote. I don't think it's a very democratic process. Now, I know we're a representative republic. I know all that stuff, right? But when we talk about this kind of things, we got to use these kinds of words. But I don't love how they just say, oh, this is so great, when I think that's pretty academically or intellectually dishonest to be able to say, hey, this was a proper process. Not a single name or a vote was cast in her name for the candidacy or for the nomination, let's say, rather. And I hate how dishonest that the party has been about that.
Well, let me go ahead and give you my opinion on that. So one of the things that I've understood is that the DNC, just like the RNC, is a private organization. They're not beholden by any technical law. In fact, the delegates did actually vote at the DNC, or they voted at the convention, right? Each state brought their own delegates, and that's why they went through the roll call and asked, and they said Kamala Harris and things like that. This happened at the RNC as well. I would say that it is still a democratic process. If you don't like that particular candidate, you could go in and you can vote for whoever you want to vote for. I think I don't really care so much as to how they nominated a particular candidate. And I would say even then, if you were to say it's not democratic, which I think it's fine, I think there's some democratic process still there. Especially by the way the delegates voting for that, I would still go back to and say it looks like by all accounts and by all measures, Democrats widely do favor Kamala Harris. And I haven't seen much that has shown anyways. And also, I think even to nominate somebody else wouldn't make a whole lot of sense anyways. Kamala, from what I've understood from all measures, has been able to take over Biden's war chest. It also seems like if you brought in any other candidate, I think one of the biggest ones going around was Jill Stein. She didn't have a whole lot of support to begin with. And you can do that, but it was a very short amount of time, right? We're talking about, I think it was like June or July that Kamala ended up coming in, and the election was supposed to happen in November. That's why, if you look at some of the platforms that were going on at the DNC, it was still mentioning Joe Biden running. And the reason why is because in order to change that platform, they would have to still do things by process of a vote to actually change the party platform. So you could say whether or not it's democratic, it depends on how loosely we use that word. Again, I'm not too much concerned about a private organization, how they do their thing. A private organization can run how they want to do it. And if we don't like it, then somebody could put in a law and try to sit there and say that this is how it needs to be done. I don't know how I would really feel about that personally. Again, I think you can vote for whoever you want to vote for at the end of the day. You still aren't obliged to vote for Kamala just because the DNC decided to bring Kamala as their candidate.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing that I feel differently about how the DNC does it. I'm just saying for them to elect, pick her, and she was, I mean, you can probably disagree with this, but before Biden stepped down, she was very unfavorable. I think she was even more unfavorable than Biden at the time, right? But they knew that there was no path forward with Biden. So then, they said, okay, we got to find someone, and Kamala just kind of came there. Then her polling maybe went up because of what all the Democratic Party said, and it's like, oh, this was so awesome. This is exactly what we've been trying to do the whole time. That's where I'm saying, they've been a little bit intellectually dishonest, in my opinion, about it.
No, I get that. I respect that. And I don't want anything I say to come off like I don't. And I think when you look at a lot of what's been going on with Kamala, I understand that her initial perception, and it's undeniable that she was probably a little bit more progressive running around in the 2020 election as opposed to being more moderate now. But again, that's where I tell people this all the time, is that when you look at the two different candidates, I would much rather have a moderate Democrat running for office than having somebody like Donald Trump, who is very open and honest. And I keep telling people this. I'm like, look, you know what? Let Donald Trump be open. Let Donald Trump be honest. Let him not be your typical politician, because guess what? It reveals his true colors. Now, with Kamala, you may say that's a negative thing. I think it's a fine thing. I do know where she kind of generally stands. She has had a progressive past, and it didn't work out too well for her. And it seems that through what she's worked with under Biden, it seems that she has probably moderated some of her positions, having been vice president. Now, time will tell, and I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see kind of a split Congress come this election, and I think that what we're going to see is a more moderate presidency from Kamala Harris. And even with Donald Trump, I'm a little hesitant on that. Even thinking Donald Trump going into office, I would still be kind of concerned with how he would end up trying to push through certain policies. He's been known, for example, to go through and try to reallocate funding from FEMA, even though it's congressionally approved. We've seen this from I believe it's the DOD to fund the wall, right? Is that he has ways of trying to go around and skirt around Congress. Whereas I do believe that Kamala Harris would work with Congress, and seeing that she also had the most tie-breaking votes ever as a vice president, I do think she's going to be more moderate, and I'm not entirely too concerned about the fact that she ended up getting nominated through an, if you want to call it an undemocratic process, so be it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it was just it felt like it was raining and they're telling you it was 80 and sunny kind of sometimes, right?
Well, it's like when I was in 2020, I had a lot of criticisms of the left. And at that time, I was still in 2020, I was still a little bit more on the conservative side. And I had a lot of criticism of those who were standing Biden. I'm like, I kind of had that same thing that Republicans have now, which is, look, you clearly voted for Biden because he's just not Trump.
Right.
That's pretty clear now. But I think that it has shifted a little bit when it comes to Kamala. I think there are a lot of policy positions that Kamala has that make her super favorable. I also think that the contrast between the two candidates is dramatically different. She's very upbeat, and I'm gonna say the word joyous because I know it triggers people, and I love it. Is that she's more joyous. Donald Trump's more doom and gloom. The country's going to come to an end if I'm not elected. And so I think these contrasts are just completely different. And so that's where I do think she stands out a little bit different than the 2020 Joe Biden. So, but I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, can I ask one last question?
Yeah, of course.
Because, I'm extremely independent leaning, right? I mean, sure. I am very conservative, but I think, probably one of our most important things is the climate change crisis. So I'm, I consider myself not really affiliated with anyone, which I think is important to say as a precursor. But I guess if I'm someone who wants conservatives in office, Donald Trump is my biggest enemy because people are voting against him no matter what they believe in because they hate Donald Trump. So why do you think it is that so many Americans and politicians are so blind to that fact that they can't, detach themselves from Donald Trump? I mean, what kind of, psychology behind that, or what kind of psychology is there behind that, rather? Because, again, I was excited the way the 2022 midterms went because it meant, okay, we're finally going to get rid of Donald Trump because of how badly we performed. Technically speaking, proportionately with all the, ratings that approval ratings, that the Democrats had, we should have had, the biggest shift in seats in history. If you look at what proportion of people were disapproved and how many seats they lost and yada yada yada, right? So we the right extremely underperformed in 2022, but they didn't change anything. I mean, they didn't change anything.
No, they didn't.
And it's almost like political malpractice. So I want to know what your thoughts on that are.
Thoughts more specifically on the malpractice part, or where
why the right can't detach themselves from Trump because
it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. I don't have an answer for you, to be quite frank, because I think that's one of the things that, like you said, it's like every candidate who really gets supported by Donald Trump seems to have either end up in some kind of a wild controversy or they end up not getting elected. And it's time after time and time after again. And why the Republican Party is so hell-bent on supporting Donald Trump is beyond me. However, I think we are starting to see a shift. We are seeing more and more Republicans coming out and supporting Kamala Harris, and not just your run-of-the-mill like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. We're seeing, I'd have to look at it. There's a few other Republicans that have actually stepped out and said, hey, I'm supporting Kamala Harris. We saw Mike Pence do all but endorse Kamala Harris. So there's a lot of angles that we can see Republicans starting to go that way. I think that if Kamala Harris were to get elected, I think that's really going to put a pep in the step of a lot of Republicans to start kind of taking back their party. And right now, I think we're going to see, I believe that we're going to see a record turnout of Republicans voting for Kamala Harris. But I think that because of how loyal that MAGA base is, I think this is going to be that moment where you're going to have the silent majority, where a lot of people are afraid of even mentioning that, hey, like, you know, hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. If I told that to my family, good Lord, I'd be exiled. So for me, it's like, I think that we are going to see the beginning of the end. If Kamala Harris were to be elected, I think a lot more Republicans are starting to kind of go that way. But it does sadden me to see over the past couple of years where they are absolutely being puppeted by Donald Trump. It's insane to me.
Well, yeah, but again, like, yeah, I don't even know if it's more about like the constituents. Like, people are still voting for Donald Trump, you know. And if I want a conservative person in office, I don't know why you would be voting for Donald Trump, because he is your biggest enemy. So just from the political standpoint, where you are so blind to the fact that, you know, you're going to suffer in terms of the elections, because you know, whether or not we can agree with this, but the Democrats were highly unfavored in this you know, term from Biden. Right. So if you had anyone, you know, slightly progressive or slightly middle on the you know, right side, I think they would have absolutely swept the floor with anyone. But again, they just continue to choose to elect Donald Trump and put him on, you know, the ticket. And I think that's what hurts the Republicans most in the long run. And, you know, like you said, maybe it's going to change this year where, okay, you know, people feel very strong that he lost to someone like Kamala or even Joe Biden, let's say, right, where you can finally detach yourself. But I just don't know how they got themselves in this situation again. Right. I mean, yeah, it's just nuts to me.
It is. It's wild to me. And I completely sympathize with you. And I don't really know why Republicans have absolutely gone nuts. It's just been insane. I'm watching on the left, we got the Butler thing going on. It looks like there's some something going on over there. I don't know what it is that they got going on.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll leave now, but I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I appreciate it, buddy. Oh, there it is. Elon's coming up. That's what it is. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming by, Lars. Thank you so much, and it was good talking with you, buddy. All right.
I think Republicans and Democrats are the same terrorist, tyrannical government.